Hey there, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Peter Calloway. He is a public defender in San Francisco. There's been a whole lot of media buzz going on after Chesa Boudin, who was the San Francisco district attorney, was voted out in a recall. 60 to 40, 60% voted to recall him. He won in 2019 and has done a lot of really progressive measures for San Francisco. But now that he has been removed, the New York Times, among others, have proclaimed this a huge condemnation of these kind of progressive criminal justice reform measures and a backlash by even people in so-called the liberal bastion of San Francisco against rising crime. So I wanted to have you on. You are a public defender there. You know all the things that went on in this recall effort, and you have a different take on the media narrative that this is basically a backlash against progressive criminal justice crusaders trying to reform the system.
I do. Thanks, Jordan, and thanks for having me on. I'm a public defender in San Francisco, as you mentioned, and just a quick sort of qualifier, I'm speaking in my individual capacity, not as a representative of the office. There's a lot here, right? I think maybe I'll start by just noting that, in the days leading up to the election here, there was a survey. I think it was sort of requested by the Examiner. They hired some independent polling company that showed something which other surveys have showed as well, which is that basically every one of Chesa Boudin's policies is overwhelmingly popular, right? Ending cash bail, not prosecuting kids as adults, starting a commission to address the sort of scourge of wrongful convictions, starting a worker protection unit, right? So people like these things. The problem is that people came to believe a dramatically distorted narrative about what's happening in this city with crime and who Chesa Boudin is. The national response, and this was sort of one of my primary concerns when this thing started to look like it could potentially have some legs. The national response has been horrific. It's easy to predict the consequences of this recall for the limited system in which, we're kind of operating. So what I mean by that is just the harms that will be produced by this recall on people, involved in the criminal legal system here, whether as people who are accused of crime or people who are, who are victimized by it, will be severe. We might see children being prosecuted as adults again, and this is an issue that's been sort of fully adjudicated, in the public sphere, in my opinion, with respect to the brain science that shows, the way that children's brains develop differently, and also the criminogenic effects of incarceration. The fact that condemning someone to a cage makes it more likely that they'll commit some future harm. So I could go on. But the harms, that will come to people like my clients, like their families, their communities, are numerous, profound, severe, and in many cases irreparable. The greater harm, there's a broader harm extending beyond San Francisco, beyond the criminal legal system in this city. And that's this narrative that you've described that's emerging, that will be sort of weaponized against people trying to reduce the harms perpetrated by the criminal legal systems in cities across the country. And the New York Times was all over it, right? From the moment that they called the election. It's a friend sort of suggested that this reads as though they had this ready to go regardless of what happened in any other election in California. Because in other elections in California, you had what could only really be characterized as confirming support for progressive prosecution, right? For people who are trying to mitigate harm, who are trying to, tell a different story about what the system actually does, rather than the story that's suggested by the media's sort of appetite for sensationalized nightly coverage of individual, sometimes tragedies, and other times things like petty thefts. But, the Times ignored that Rob Bonta trounced Anne Marie Schubert, the tough on crime Sacramento DA, in the election for AG. They ignored victories in Oakland and in other cities across the state. They told only one story, because it's a story that the New York Times and other mainstream liberal outlets have been telling, for a long time now, which is that, the public is tired of progressive policies that have caused an increase in crime. And there's sort of three parts to that statement. People are tired of progressive policies that have caused an increase. None of those things are true, right? Again, in California, you or in San Francisco, you've seen the support for Chesa's policies. It's generally true across the country, but also this idea of this connection to the harm, right? To crime. There's studies that show that in the short term, progressive prosecution policies, things like ending cash bail, things like not prosecuting kids as adults, things like not charging strike enhancements, which really serve only to dramatically increase the amount of time for which a person could be incarcerated if they're found guilty. Progressive policies don't increase crime in the short term. And there's a lot of evidence showing that some of these policies that are so popular in San Francisco and that Chesa used to great effect reduce crime in the long term, right? So there's a study, I think the lead author's last name is Doliak, showing that by declining to prosecute misdemeanor offenses, you actually reduce the chances of a person committing or being accused of committing any crime in the next few years.
Well, I think it should also be pointed out that there were a ton of money dumped in by Republican super PACs, et cetera, to basically blame the district attorney for all of San Francisco's problems, like more shoplifting, more petty crimes, I think misleading in terms of the amount that homicides were up, when a lot of these things are not really, he wasn't responsible for per se. A lot of these things also correlated with COVID. He was elected right before the COVID pandemic, and obviously crime has gone up all over the country during the COVID pandemic. So it seems to me these other progressive prosecutors that won in other parts of California that the New York Times, conveniently left out, didn't have this amount of money against them. Whereas Chesa Boudin was basically, to me, kind of like the sacrificial sheep for the fact that San Francisco is, unaffordable. The average cost of an apartment is over $3,000. Homelessness is out of control. With all those things, the economic elements here that are a huge driver of crime that places like the New York Times don't like to talk about, there are a lot of economic factors in San Francisco that contribute to crime.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, and people are reluctant to sort of hear this, but we're talking about the consequences of sort of late stage capitalism, right? That's what's producing the conditions on the ground that people understandably want to change. Some people want to change it so that they don't have to see it. Other people, like myself, want to change it so that people who are suffering no longer have to suffer, right? But you touched on a lot of important stuff there, right? One thing to note is that there was a ton of money. I think it's over $7 million dumped into this campaign. By far the largest single contributor was a PAC. I think it's San Franciscans for Better Safe something or other, right? The largest donor to that was a realtor agency. The second largest, edged out by just a bit, was a Republican billionaire, right? Other significant donors to this effort include one of the early investors of DoorDash. DoorDash is a company that's being sued by Chesa for misclassifying their employees as gig workers, right? Obviously, this effort had overwhelming support from police. So Chesa, in a way that I don't think any DA has ever really done, challenged powerful interests, and power does not accept being challenged very easily. Another point that I think is being overlooked by most of the press is that so far, I think the numbers are still at about 60. We expect that's probably going to go down, but probably not below 55, 45. All right. But we're talking about around 75,000 people, right? It's less than 10% of the city, actually. And a huge number of those people were undoubtedly influenced by relentless propaganda that just lied to them about the state of problems and the cause of them and the appropriate solutions. And if you repeat something over and over and over again, I mean, this is just a core truth of propaganda, people will begin to believe it. And I've noticed this in my conversations, whether, knocking on doors or just out in the city, people really believe it. And a number of people could be persuaded, with enough sort of evidence that these things aren't true. But many of them could not.
Right. And lastly, what are the real life effects now? You mentioned that a lot of the policies that he championed, you don't expect whoever the mayor appoints to continue those.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's just think through a couple of them, right? So one of the lead contenders has sort of declared that the office would need to start seeking cash bail again. So, this is a problem because using cash bail is basically to say, irrespective of risk to public safety or not, if you're wealthy and I'm not, and we're identical in all other circumstances, and we're both accused of the same crime and everything else, if the judge sets bail, and they often, I would venture to say almost always, do what the prosecutor asks, if the judge sets bail, you can pay and be released and go on with your life, and I'm stuck in a dirty, disgusting, violent cage, right? Deprived of sunlight and fresh air and touching, hugging my loved ones and a decent meal and everything else. So there's that harm. Just the fact of additional time in a cage is a tremendous harm. Then there's the harms that reverberate throughout the community. People, not in their homes, filling their family role, whatever that might be, or at their job, or, volunteering or anything like that. So let's say then also that this person starts using strike enhancements again. So now you're taking time in prison and in some cases potentially multiplied it, right? But strikes often add a decade, sometimes more, onto a charge. And so now you've dramatically increased the amount of time that people spend in prison. And again, there are studies really irrefutable that show that that is a criminogenic function, right? You're actually creating more crime in the future by doing this, to say nothing of the tremendous harm that befalls most people who are in prisons, which are incredibly violent, sort of torturous places. And then there's the ending of the affirmative stuff he's doing, right? There's all these sort of negative sort of benefits. not doing certain things, but he went out and created a worker protection unit, right? He's suing these corporations, which again, back to the sort of capitalist critique, have, because there's no disincentive to do otherwise, if you're an amoral actor with an obligation to boost your bottom line, who have exploited their workers and driven San Franciscans deeper into poverty, right? 70% of the people who are on the streets in San Francisco lived in a home here within, I think, the past year. It's a really staggering fact that most people, don't understand. They think that everybody here who's homeless in San Francisco comes from another city. Sometimes they think they've been bused here. Sometimes they think they come here just because they know how easy it is to be homeless here, which could not be further from the truth. I have unhoused clients. Probably a majority of my clients are unhoused, right? And many of them, even under Chesa, are charged with petty theft, right? For stealing things like shoes that they put on before they leave the store, right? So there's a direct connection between these affirmative things he's done and some of the negative prevention of harm stuff. You can almost guarantee, because it's really been unprecedented, that whoever takes office next is not going to be prosecuting cops for abusing their authority, for being corrupt, for using excessive force against the people who they're, engaging in the community, arresting and whatever. They may dismantle the wrongful conviction unit or the Innocence Commission. And so now you have people who are factually innocent of the thing that they're accused of doing and in prison for, who will potentially be there forever. I could go on, and
right.
Yeah, it's very sad. It's very sad.
Well, thank you for kind of giving a lot of context that was missing in the coverage. I think it is a good thing, and good that you mentioned that less high-profile national races, there were progressive prosecutors who won, which shows that it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, and that these policies are popular, including in some areas that progressive prosecutors won that have a higher population than San Francisco, a larger population. So thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.